I'm live. Hooray! Ooh, I see we already have people waiting. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another WineShark Wednesday. Well, here in a few minutes anyway. Today is Technical Crazy Wednesday here in Glenn's world. Had to replace a phone, had to work out some computer stuff. Our excellent fan Rob has loaned us some gear, this brand new awesome camera, so we should have better sound and better video. But needless to say, technology was being defiant of me today. But looks like we're working just fine. So we will get going here on topics here in just a minute. I see we got a few visitors just coming in. So what are we going to talk about today? Let me get my notes pulled up here. We got few things to say. Hopefully some good questions from you guys online. Hope everybody's week was going well. It is definitely time to crack open a glass. In fact, I'm gonna do so in a cheat mode here before we actually even get going. We're gonna do our grocery store grab today, which is gonna be kind of cool. I'll try this wine together a little bit later. But yeah, so hey, Mary. Hey, from Minnesota. David and Mary, how we doing? Great to see you guys. We miss you all too. It's been I'm sure that everybody misses everybody at this point. You know, all of us that are, stuck inside for who knows how long. So welcome to the channel. I'm glad you guys joined up. Make sure everybody get yourself a glass of wine. It's going to be a sit and chat. And we're going to talk about wine a little bit later. Excellent. Whoa, zingy. Definitely going to be excited to talk about that. So let's see. It's now 6 on the dot. So Jennifer Ross misses things. Yes, I miss things just in general as well. Just so many little things. But specifically this, missing the fair, missing the festival, and some of the beautiful spring weather, getting to hang out with you guys and drink wine. I mean, I gotta say, that's no good, but we're gonna be very pleased here, to do this. I've been really excited. Hey, Mr. Teach, how we doing? Good to see Teach and Reba coming in from down in San Antonio. Great to see you guys. So let's get started with just some rough topics. To reiterate again on these, yeah, Rob's right. Remember when we could go places, see things? So just to reiterate some of what we're going to do on these Wednesday kind of live streams. Kind of my two purposes are to make accessible YouTube content, to introduce myself to people who are new. The live stream format is going to be pretty good, I think, for a couple of different styles of topics. Rather than a focused classroom style material where I've got a laid out series of notes and a specific learning plan. These are going to be a little bit more free form. Of course, I welcome the Q&A, which is awesome. We're going to do our grocery store grabs probably every week here on Wednesday, which I think is going to be fun. Gives us a segment of content. And then we're also going to focus on getting a little ranty. Some of the things that I want to talk about have that kind of come from a more natural format where we can go back and forth in a topical chat type format. So some of the topics, for instance, we're gonna talk about wine in boxes one of these days. We're gonna do a rant on prohibition. I've easily got an hour's worth of material on complaining about how prohibition destroyed our wine worlds, or at least how it's still in effect today and what you guys need to be aware of and how to use that stuff. So. But okay, yeah. So trying the rosé from last week, yeah, that was a really nice little find. I mean, as I said, I bought it for the stopper, but that was pretty tasty. Something else I'm going to try and be better at is catching up on my Vivino scanning. Anything I bring into the shows, I'll be sure to pop into Vivino. One of the challenges there is that to make it visible to friends that follow me on Vivino, I have to rate everything, and that's not something I'm a huge fan of. I don't mind rating wines at all. But I gotta be able to put a focus to actually making a good review. You know what I mean? I don't want to just throw some stars out there and say, "Wow, it was juicy and jammy and it was awesome." That's not helpful. And as a educator professional, that's something I want to try and avoid. So unfortunately, my squirrel brain sometimes doesn't take good notes on some of those things, and I'll have to leave one behind till later. But I will at least scan them for you so that you can share. So yeah, what is also on my list here? We had our first live stream wine tasting last Friday, which was amazing, and thankful that everybody who showed up and tolerated our technical challenges. I mean, step over step, I know they said we're growing, but this is so much easier to do with proper equipment. And like I said, thanks to Rob and his support. And I've got some other stuff on the way, new cam and a new mic, and we'll get new setups, and it'll be awesomer. So that lesson should be getting loaded up. I just converted it in Vimeo today. We will be loading it up to the Patreons to view, and you guys can check out and review yourselves if you want to see yourselves online. And we've got I will be working more on tightening up that format, just because we had definitely some good lessons learned there. I had a great ton of fun. I think everybody else did. One of the things I think that's a real advantage for the format is that the chat was very lively. While I was talking about a topic, we had guests were talking back and forth about favorites and wines and all kinds of things. And so that's very pleasing to me to see that you guys can have that kind of interaction with each other in as much as you can have it with me too. So I appreciate all the people who asked questions, and I appreciate everybody who participated in any way, shape, or form. I think we had a pretty good crowd. I would say that just a number of actual viewers, we were probably in the 25 to 30 range, I think, in total. So rock on for us. And we're doing Sauvignon Blancs this week, $15 to $20. We're going to do California, Bordeaux, and New Zealand, Marlborough region of New Zealand. Kind of compare that grape in 3 different styles and places. Really one of my favorites. So that's going to be cool. So yeah. What else is on the list of awesome things to talk about? I guess we can kind of go into the grocery store grabs and jump this one. Actually, let me do one more technical piece before we go that far. And that is, I know that for the stream, I don't really expect everybody to be here the whole time. That some people are going to have kind of come and go, stop in and talk about stuff. I want to know that you guys are here. You might hear me repeating myself occasionally because I get questions in the chat that were already brought up earlier. So think of it more as a live radio and video hour rather than just a succinct lesson. So I have no idea what timing-wise will look like for the grocery store grab. Maybe that'll keep people guessing. Either that, or I can figure out how to add chapters to the video so you can go, just show me the part with the wine, damn it. That'd be kind of cool. So let's talk about grocery store grabs and the concept behind it. One of the big fundamentals of WineShark has always been that wine is a grocery, not just a luxury, right? And that wine should be part of everyday life and something that you can enjoy all the time. Well, depending on how you're living and what your budgets might be, or even if you're just getting into wine, you're new and you're trying to discover stuff, value is an important thing. And while some of us have the fortunate luck to live next to a big box retail store, like something like a Total Wine or a Specs or a Goody Goody, or insert whatever flavor you have in your neighborhood here, not everybody has the opportunity to have one of those nearby. On the other hand, sometimes it's just not convenient for somebody. One place that they end up going a lot more often than they go to the liquor store is the grocery store. In fact, I would posit that most people who get into wine start at that point. They see things in the grocery store if your state, locality, and county allow it. We'll get into that as a separate point here in a minute. So we've already got your wine for Friday. Oh, excellent. And so it's very good. In fact, something I can recommend for my people that are coming to tastings, order your wine in your mixed 6-pack. Get 2 weeks of wine in a row. That way you get your 10% discount on top. So anyway, so grocery store grabs. Grocery stores are oftentimes where we're going to find exposure to a lot of different wine labels. And there are some pros and some cons to that. And I want to focus on how to get the best value for your buck. The bottom line is picking a winner and understanding some of the challenges and hurdles, understanding some of the marketing gimmicks so that you can protect yourself, and also just how to look for some really cool values that you'd be surprised sometimes at what you can find. I would also say you'd be surprised at some things that are of quality. There are depending on the area you're in and the wine drinking population around you, you might find that your grocery stores offer some really nice fine wine selections. Being a grocery store wine doesn't necessarily mean that you're cheap. I mean, I've seen some very nice labels that are popular enough to support an actual, grocery store level stocking. So, what did Jennifer say here? You raise your hand if you've ever went to the grocery store and put wine in the cart before 12 on Sunday. Prohibition. Once again, we get that done. Yeah, good point, Rob. The idea of the fact that there is no shopping at a curbside pickup is a challenge. That's actually something that I spoke to a friend of mine who's in the industry about how there's a lot of shift. You've seen lots of numbers about since the shutdown how liquor sales and alcohol sales are going up, but without the shoppability, that the brands and trending have gone in weird ways as well. So very interesting. I would be very interested to see what the industry changes after this whole thing is over. So let's talk a little bit about that legacy of prohibition. I'm going to touch on that because I really want to do an entire rant show on prohibition, really get you guys to understand why you should still care, or more importantly, just how you can see the echoes of it so that you can avoid it. We already had somebody mention specifically something like the amount, when and where you can buy alcohol. We here in our local Texas area, for instance, have certain restrictions on timing that you can buy things, and that many places in the country are like that. Some are not. It depends. Some things like Nevada, California, all bets are basically off. Whereas around here, you can't have liquor and you can't have liquor in a grocery store. For instance, in California and Oregon, that's perfectly fine. Why make you go to two separate stores? But then again, you can't have tobacco in a grocery store in Oregon. So there's that. And you can't pump your own gas, which is a separate weird Oregon thing. But I don't think it has anything to do with prohibition, just FYI. So prohibition, though, because of the 3-tier system that resulted after prohibition, that's probably the most important part about grocery store versus big box wine. Big box wineries have really strong distribution contacts and, generally speaking, higher volumes of sales. This affords them wholesale quantity pricing that allows them to offer, generally speaking, cheaper prices on an individual item, especially popular items. So dollar for dollar or type for type, if you find a bottle that you like at a grocery store, you're likely to find it a few dollars cheaper at a big box store, or conversely, expect to pay a couple of dollars more at a grocery store. This is simply because they don't move as much volume. And then because of that, they have to offer that pricing to meet their particular needs. Okay, so that's one thing. Generally speaking, we're kind of already trying to climb a hill in the sense that we've got a little bit of less wholesale costs to go for. So the legacy of prohibition has that one effect. But the lack of wine focus as well in a grocery store means that they have kind of equals higher prices. Not a big jump oftentimes, but enough. Another thing is boutique versus bulk. Wineries have to be able to produce a certain amount of volume to be able to service the often much broader grocery store chain distribution systems. So while Specs and Total Wine are large, Total Wine, for instance, is a national level chain. They have a very specific distribution network. Grocery stores have that same type of thing and can be very, very big. You might have dozens of stores within a particular metro area. So in order to get on the grocery store shelves, the distributors are the ones that are actually paying the grocery stores for their shelf space. And it's the distributors oftentimes that are deciding what goes on those shelves. So the wines that you see aren't necessarily the Albertsons or Tom Thumbs or HEBs of the world. Well, HEB is a private company and may run a little bit different. Generally speaking, it's the distributors who have that shelf space. They pay the grocery store and say, hey, I'm going to put out my product here. They measure it in linear feet. And then they then decide, okay, what's selling at this store. Now, something other interesting that goes back to prohibition that I watched happen here in Plano is when I first moved to Plano, Plano was still, actually had just gone what we call damp. Beer and wine sales were present, but liquor sales were not. And as the date approached that they voted in the actual liquor sales, that was the time when grocery stores started keying over and starting to stock beer and wine on their shelves. As a very interesting note, they are very interested in knowing what you are buying. And when I say that, I mean that they are willing to they're willing to challenge you with price in order to figure out what you're buying. Most places these days have some sort of membership card system, right? It's a basic incentive that says, hey, if you get our card, you get your club price or your card price on various products throughout the store. In marketing terms, what that is they're paying you for your information. They can then associate a specific account number, a phone number, or a name with a history of purchases. This allows them a wild amount of good information when it comes to targeting and putting what people want on their shelves. They have a much more accurate view of buying patterns and demographics than they would if they just looked at pure inventory moving off the shelves. Well, with all the money that goes into lobbying to change a county's government stance on something like liquor licensing, there's a lot of money that changes hands there, and businesses want to know that their money is well spent. Okay, so if you look at the actual sticker prices that are on the shelves for grocery stores, you will often see exorbitantly high prices. I don't remember the specific bottle name. I believe it was a bottle of Sterling Vintner's Collection. Sterling Vintner's Collection is a second label from Sterling. It is I would call their grocery store type brand. It's very much targeted at the $10 to $15 price point, possibly topping out at 20. It's not their flagship line. And I remember comparing prices when they first opened up the liquor stores, the wine sales at my local Tom Thumb. And they wanted something like $30 or $40 for that bottle, like $45. And I was jaw dropped. But then I looked, and that was the no club price. The actual club price dropped almost 70%. It was down in a reasonable $17.99 range. Okay, so it was amazing to me what they were willing to mark up a bottle of wine just to find out whether I was buying it or not. Then, of course, they incentivize you to buy mixed products as well. So buy 6, get 10% off. That happens at a lot of retail outlets, though, just to get you to buy volume. So anyway, that's something that I always found very interesting, is that those grocery stores are willing to pay for your marketing info, know what it is that you're buying. I'm betting also that has something to do with passing the information back onto the distributors, so the distributors can make good choices about what to stock. If your wine or beer does not move on their shelves, chances are you're not going to be back or out there for very long, because that's it's a product with a margin that they don't want to be throwing away. It's a very expensive product. So I've even seen markups at the 50% aisle. They'll sometimes throw wine in the gotta get it, gotta move category, that they'll pull off the end caps. Now, the funny part is I've looked at some of those wines, and I think they're just incentivizing those to move in the first place, because the wine prices are roughly equivalent to something else in the aisle anyway. In other words, saving yourself 50% just to get a reasonable price isn't a deal at all. So let's talk about we're going to go ahead and just do like today's selection. Let's get that piece going here. So, yeah, we've been here about 18 minutes. So here we go. So today, this is La Crema Monterey Pinot Noir 2017. Okay, that is our grocery store selection for the day. You guys can go out and find yourself one of your own. But let's talk a little bit about this. So, how did I select it? What did I pay for it? The whole deal. Why did I select it? La Crema is actually a fairly popular second label brand from the Jackson family of wineries. That allows them to be in that category of broad wine production. When we talk about Jackson family, you probably know the name most familiarly from Kendall Jackson. That's one of their labels. However, Jackson family owns something like 50,000 some odd acres of grapes. They own many wineries, and they produce, according to their website, produce over 6 million cases per year of wine. That's a lot of wine. But that's a lot of wine at a lot of different labels and price points. They're marketing to a lot of different styles of wine. Okay, so the La Crema label, which La Crema is La Crema Vignale, which basically means the best of the vineyard, and La Crema Vina is their mantra. They do all kinds of different regions. They have both the La Crema label is a U.S. regional label. They do Sonoma Coast, Monterey, Willamette Valley up in Oregon, and have a lot of different varieties of wine in different styles. So the La Crema label digs pretty deep. Now, I've had several of their wines before. The Chardonnay, and we got Corey and Mary have had their Chardonnay. Okay, so good. The Chard is kind of their classic, and that's it is what I would call it is a iconic California style. You know, it is just definitely dead towards the middle. It's not overly oaked, and it moved away from that kind of pattern, which I think is a good thing. But let's try their Monterey Pinot Noir here. So important notes: label La Crema, right? Varietal Pinot Noir. Region, we're in Monterey, so this is the north end of the Central Coast. What we're going to talk about here is just how does this wine do as close for style? How well was it executed as far as winemaking process was concerned? Do we detect any cheats or any winemaking shenanigans that might be there to cover up less quality winemaking? And then, you know, the bottom line of it, is it worth the price tag? So let's start with that. I believe I got this for $15.49. Okay, well within what I would call the grocery store range. When I shop at the grocery store, I'm usually looking at wines in between the $15 to $25 price point. Generally, that's about where I'm looking at the big box wine store too. Although at the grocery store, as I said, because of the price inflation, I tend to expect a little bit less in quality because of the markup. But okay, let's get to the wine itself. So color-wise, poured this just a minute ago. This has a iconic cranberry red Pinot Noir color. This is on the very light end of the scale, not even yet hitting that ruby range. It is a nice clear. You can see all the way through it now. It is. We've got. You know, it is clear. It has got no flaws, so we're looking at good on the clarity scale. I'll give it a swirl here. Okay, on the nose comes off on the raw end of the fruit scale, on the higher, more acidic fruit scale. We've got notes of cranberry or bright cherry, maybe cherry pit. And back there's a little bit of vanilla. Not quite dense enough for something like a pomegranate. It's got that. It's certainly more on that fresh juice side. No reductive fruits. Very fruit forward. And I'm not getting a lot of, so you said in classic California style. There's not a lot of soil or terroir here. Maybe a tiny hint of some sort of clay or loamy thing. But I think that's the vanilla as much as anything else. But there's, well, maybe not. Maybe in the back there might be a little hint of some minerality. Let's find out. Okay, get to the second. Get to our sip. Okay, well, tannins are soft, right? It's got a nice kind of bridge across the middle. Acidity, good popping acidity, mouth-watering front mouth, keeping that cranberry kind of mentality going. Very much very juicy, like that a lot. This is going to be a great food pairing Pinot Noir, right? This one's going to go well with a lot of lighter things in the pan and the broiler and the grill. This is your perfect for roast chicken. This is your salmon fun wine. This is steelhead trout. From the protein perspective, red bell peppers might be an interesting contrast for this. You could do this on the lighter side with some sort of fruit, because if you really wanted to kind of accentuate that acidic pop. One of the things that the wine tasting notes actually mentioned was blood orange, kind of blood orange taste to it. So I'd really like to see this on the table next to some food. It's got enough just easy drinkability though that I wouldn't mind just sitting around sipping on this by itself. This is easily a couch wine and a food wine. Pinot Noir is the Swiss Army and Gerber multi-tool of the wine world when it comes to that, in my opinion. So this is very on style for that. And when it comes to Monterey Central Coast, yeah, this is that northern style. This is cool, right next to the sea. So you got that coastal breeze, cool growing conditions, very maritime. This, by the way, if I was doing blind, the thing you'd watch out for is, does this match into a New Zealand style, Marlborough style? Their maritime growing conditions also mimic that same sort of bright, fresh fruit nature. They occasionally get a little bit on the slightly richer side, I think. But for what you're paying for this is pretty damn good Pinot Noir. I mean, I would have also said 20 years ago, getting good Pinot Noir under $20 was really a challenge. Pinot Noir is a difficult grape to grow. In fact, for those of you that hung around or maybe have joined me over at the Oren Swift live interview on Instagram after the live stream last week, listen to Dave Finney talk about that. He produced six different years of Pinot Noir that he never bottled because they didn't get it right to his satisfaction. Think about that. 6 growing seasons of production where you went, nah, we'll try again next year. That's like heartbreaking to me. It's like, oh my God, that's how awful is that? But that's the business. I'm like, when you play at a certain pro level, you don't put out crap wine. You might sell the fruit for other purposes and you're not taking a total loss, but you're certainly not making, you're not making your wine out of it and putting your name on it if it's not going to live there. Jennifer Roth had a question. From grocery stores, we drink a lot of Burlwood from Aldi. It is made by E&JG. Okay, it's their hotel and grocery line. Low cost, but good for every day. We then pepper that with others. Absolutely. So we're going to do a whole real value line concept. We'll get into the $5 to $10 wines, right? Where, we'll do the end to $10 wines. Because there's a lot of range in there, from the 2 buck chucks to the to Aldi line to Black Mountain, which is Trader Joe's exclusives, and we'll kind of dig into the sordid underbelly of what those are and how they're made. And I'll tell you, I don't disagree with them as perfectly drinkable wines. Okay, I mean, I said one of the most interesting, probably the cheapest and best tasting Pinot Noir at the price point that I've ever had is Black Mountain from Trader Joe's. And Black Mountain Pinot Noir, I wouldn't have even thought about it. I mean, a Pinot Noir at that price point, I would have assumed was just crappy. But they were handing out samples, and with a cheese sample at Trader Joe's when I was shopping. And so they had this nice little fresh goat cheese and this little plastic slug of wine, and man, it just lit up. And I was like, man, for the price point, that's not bad at all. Now, some of the stuff they do to get the wine to taste the way it does, we'll talk about what some of those winemaking techniques are. That's where we're getting into that world of science messing with things as much as we are with good quality winemaking. So let's also talk just about some of the numbers here. Let's talk about a trick that you guys can use if you're really wanting to get into the medium level of geek of your wines. When I go do wine research for and I know a specific label I'm looking for, one of the things I do is I go to the winery's website and I go looking for a link to their trade section. The trade section is where their distributors and folks go look for specific information on the wines. In this case, what you're looking for are their tasting notes, their winemaking notes is what they might also call them. This is where you can get some really specific information that can help you understand about the wines prior to actually purchasing them. So you're going to get their personal tasting notes for which will give you flavor descriptors. That's pretty awesome, considering that maybe you don't see it on the label. In fact, let's dodge into the label as soon as I get done talking about that. Okay. So the tasting notes from this, when you pull this up, this is the deeper dive. Well, this is mostly about them and their winemaking, but it does have the winemaker's notes about flavors. Aromas of black plum, cherry, rhubarb, hints of earth and loam. Flavors of red plum, raspberry, and blood orange are underpinned by distinctive riverstone minerality and savory umami character. Well, I'm not catching the umami yet, but it might warm up and come to me in a bit. Plush and richly textured with juicy yet balanced acidity and integrated toasty barrel spice. Now, that toasty barrel spice seems a little odd considering that the stats on this wine say it's 100% Pinot Noir, Monterey appellation, but it only had 17% new oak. So that's a pretty light dose of oak just to give it that hint of wood and vanilla and toast nature, okay? Other than that, 100% French style oak the whole way through, 17% of it is new. Alcohol ranks in at a medium warm 13.9%. Although I think the fruit hides that well, so you're not feeling like an overly, you're not overly hot in the mouth. Plus, it's got a real slick viscosity, so you're not sticking into it's not sticking on your palate and causing you to feel that velvet heat of glove. Velvet glove of alcohol heat is what I meant to say. So now here's two numbers that you'll often always see that are a little bit more wine geeky to understand, but I'm going to give you just a brief summary. You'll see the letters TA and pH. TA stands for tartratable acidity or total acidity. pH stands for the pH scale, which I don't actually know what the pH scale is named for. That's weird. I'm going to have to look that up. But anyway, the pH scale and the TA scale can tell you how much punch and how much acid a wine has got, even if you've never tasted or seen it. Okay. pH is probably the more important one to understand as it relates to the intensity or volume of, the intensity rather than the volume of acidity. Total acidity combines all the types of acids that happen in wine. Things like tartaric acid, citric acid, malic acid, lactic acid, okay? Gives you a total quantity. These numbers are usually anywhere between 0 and 1. And you know, they're expressed, this one for instance is 0.51. Okay, that's so 0.51 milligrams per liter. Okay, then your pH value, however, with wines, it's usually between about 3 and somewhere a little over 4 to 4.2. Okay, water is 7 and is neutral. Extraordinarily acid is 0. Okay, so the lower you go down the scale, the more acid pop you get. So the lower that pH number, the more vibrant that acidity is going to be. The more it's going to make your mouth water, the more you're going to feel that acid zip. Okay, for potential for hydrogen. Thank you, Teach. I know having a chemist in the crowd. There we go. So potential for hydrogen is pH. The more you know. So thank you, Teach. You get free something. I'm a gold star and a special mention and another live cast. So 3 to 4.2. Okay, now here's an interesting note. You go, oh wow, you know, I don't really like high acid wines. You know, there's something that you may not find pleasant. Balance in wine and how that acidity is balanced with other factors is really what's important in how you taste. For instance, most sodas like Coca-Cola, etc., are actually lower in pH than even the most acidic white wines. But they're so laden in with sugar that you don't notice that acidity as much. It still has that crisp, mouth-watering kind of flavor, but even though it's at a 2.8, you know, pH, but it's got dosed with, you know, 150 grams of sugar per year per 12 ounces. So you're like, oh, hey now, so an extra pour. Yes, Teach, you may have an extra pour. So those are two numbers you'll see on the Deep Geek. But let's talk about what we could see if we just picked up the label. Because again, we're at the grocery store. This is what we care about most. The back of this label, remember I taught a class on labeling and looking for high quality information versus marketing information. Now the front, it's got the basics: name, place, vintage and varietal. Good, solid, clear, easy readable. I do not complain. On the back, we've got their name again. We've got over 40 years of winemaking excellence. They've got a prestige block. Hooray. So here's the interesting thing. This is what the back of the bottle says. It says, capturing the unique personality of cool climate vineyards since 1979, La Crema Viniera, the best of the vine. Visit the La Crema estate. Learn more at lacrema.com. Pinot Noir Monterey in California. Notice it doesn't have those tasting notes. It doesn't have descriptors on it. Now, one could argue that those are personal, but generally speaking, if the winemaker tastes those things and you know what you're looking for, I would prefer some information on here about what types of flavors I'm to be expecting, not just about the fact that they've been making wines for 40 years. That's cool, but that's not a flavor profile. And this is about flavor, okay? So you can also see here, though, you can also look up information on the back of this. This is where you get curious about, where does my wine come from? Knowing the fact that this is a Kendall Jackson family wine, or a Jackson family wineries group, it can give you a little information on whether you like other wines that different of their wineries make. For instance, I love Freemark Abbey. That's a property of theirs. Siduri, who makes some fantastic Pinot Noirs, is another property of theirs. So they've got some winemaking chops in there in other areas that may pass on or pass down to other labels. So that's always good to know. Other than that, really, this has just got, it's really got the rest of the required information. Government warnings, vinted and bottled by. So that's where you see vinted and bottled by La Crema, Santa Rosa, California. Notice it doesn't link anything to their parent company. And that, by the way, is usually to prevent, marketing / branding bias, right? If you had a bad experience with a particular label or brand and you won't go back to it, they don't necessarily want to remind you, oh, hey, by the way, we made this. So that's something you kind of have to do a little bit of scratching and digging for. But these days, most of us carry a computer in our pocket. You have access to look up information with a surprising speed. And if you want to be a well-informed consumer, I would recommend it. That's the kind of thing of, don't be afraid to do searches on the internet right there. If you are a Vivino fan, I like the Vivino application. I can use it for comparatives. It has a scanner on there, and it can do two things. It can take a picture of a barcode label on the back and tell you information, or it can take a picture and identify the label on the front, and it can give you what that wine is, how it's overall rated by its users, what its average price is, what its price near you is if you've turned on the location feature. And it usually offers two things: highly rated wines at similar prices, or other wines other varietals at similar prices. So it gives you options of, do you want to stay in the same price point but see if you can get better quality, or do you want to see similar things in the same price range? So very, very cool tool right there in your phone for you to be able to do that. So not a bad little grocery store find. I mean, I admit I went with something safe, something I knew. We're going to be exploring some random ones. I'm going to be working at picking out some labels I've never seen before. We're going to talk about trends eventually. That's another probably live stream video chat. Will be me ranting about and ranting and raving, for that matter. It's not all rant about trends in wine. Specifically talking about, we'll talk about the Merlot boom. We'll talk about the Shiraz craze. We'll talk about Malbec as the new black. We'll talk about, red blends are now acceptable, and then we'll get into the new, everything's got to be in a barrel craze. So, but those are interesting because those are most widely seen on grocery store shelves. Something I noticed, for instance, at my local Tom Thumb, in the the barrel craze has been about the last 2 years, let's say. So T-2 to the last 5, the amount of shelf space that grew towards red wine blends was dramatic. It was 1 4-foot section, top to bottom, when I first began. And now it's basically 3 or 4 of those, because red blends grew in popularity and wild popularity, and people started thinking, oh, it's actually okay to drink blends. So I always thought that was kind of an important note. All right, any other questions from anybody so far? Kind of got a good spot on here. I mean, we've gotten ourselves a good little grocery store find. What about you guys? Do you guys? We mentioned a couple of others, an Aldi brand. Do you guys have go-tos that you guys like for the grocery store that you know are known safe spots? Or are we talking about, do you guys have ones that you're questioned about that you've always wondered? Have you had bad experiences with a label? Vivino, the best tool of the trade. Yeah, Rob's got it. Rob's a very technical user though, so he again likes that. Vivino's pretty slick. The only thing I wish Vivino would do a little bit differently is that I want the vino to just have, if I scan a wine that says this is what I'm drinking, I want to just say this is what I'm drinking without necessarily having to rate it. Because if especially amongst my followers / my friend group, I'm just curious as to new ideas, right? And not necessarily having to go to that deep rating range. 19 crime stuff and blends are not okay. So, okay, let me address your second question first. And yes, Corey's got a good point. I mean, buying stuff off of tastings is nice. Yes, I agree. It is very important that, try before you buy is great. It's one of the things that's awesome about big box stores, and they rarely see that at the grocery store. You don't get to oftentimes where they put a wine rep in, letting you try before you buy. But I highly recommend it. But back to 19 Crimes. So 19 Crimes, I have mixed opinions about. I have had in my tasting, I've had the 19 Crimes Shiraz Cab Blend. I think it was probably 2, maybe 3 years ago. And it was definitely a solid for the price point buy. It was not a fantastic Shiraz. It was an okay Shiraz. But at $12 a bottle, it was pretty good. Well, they have put the pedal to the metal on their marketing campaign. I don't know if any of you have seen, they've got this cool app you can get in there and it scans the label. You hold your phone up to the label and the label basically comes to life and talks to you through your phone. Really slick stuff, very Ride at Disney kind of wine experience. But my concern with that is I have heard a lot of feedback that their other products are not punching up to their price point. I saw also at my grocery store the other day, so we may see this as an example. I saw a bottle of theirs that was a bourbon barrel aged that they were running at something like $30 or $40, which is way above their usual price range. So I am curious to see whether it's all gimmick, etc. I would also, although their name stems from the 19 original crimes that would get you deported from England to Australia, i.e. how Australia became originally populated by Westerners. That's an interesting story. The weird part is the timing of that always came out on some of the other popular Me Too blends, or Me Too brands rather. So when The Prisoner got very popular, which was Orrin Swift's one of his original products before he was Orrin Swift, when Dave Finney was doing stuff, the Prisoner Wine Company came around. We had a lot of follow-on brands, okay, that were desperately trying to get people to make the mistake of, what was that wine called? I don't know, we really enjoyed it. It was something about a guy, it was in jail or something like that. So I've seen stuff like The Fugitive and 19 Crimes and all these other knockoff type brands. They feel like dollar store versions of their adult wines. Well, hello. Hi. Laszlo. Everybody. Laszlo. Laszlo would like my attention, apparently. Yes, you may not have any wine. Say hi to the internet. Ooh. All right, get out. Oh, thank you. So, anyway, sorry about that. Where were we? 19 Crimes, and blends. So the answer of blending. Jennifer Roth has blends are not okay. No, blends are fantastic. But the public didn't seem to know that. The general wine drinking public, and I have heard this multiple times throughout my years as a wine educator, that people, in the grocery store level of wine drinker, the average Joe who likes to drink juice, there was a perception that blends were somehow subpar, that they were winemakers' leftovers. And finally, what we got was a trend that demonstrated that blending wines is not only an actual winemaker art, but the most prestigious wines in the world many of them are blends. Now, the exception to there being the Burgundy and Pinot Noirs, they tend to be pure Pinots, but Châteauneuf du Pape, Bordeaux, all of these are not 100% of one type of grape. They are very often blends. In fact, in the case of CDPs, they are legally up to 17 types of grapes. Although usually they only run about 4 to 5. So anyway, blending became okay in the last 7 years. And so we started to see these low-end red blends, which, by the way, is a cool thing, but it led to a lot of questionable behavior. And we're going to go into that when I talk about that rant in particular, because it's a Venn diagram of both the blending art and the inexpensive winemakers market and the hocus pocus stuff. The what do we do to make this wine taste better when the grapes we have are only in quality? There's a lot of winemaker tricks that can go along with that. All right, seriously, you're giving me the eyeball. Don't give me the eyeball. Sorry, he's giving me the stink eye and probably wants to go out. So yeah, we can go out. No. Now Tuco has something to say. Sorry, I should put a disclaimer that I live with my 2 dogs and therefore you may experience dog from time to time. But they keep me sane, so that's cool. So what else? Our only wine store here in town of 5,000, the West Side Liquor and Colborn's. We are 110 miles from Total Wine. So you basically got so Mary has a very tiny example. No big box stores at all, tiny boutiques. So you may run into a similar problem different way, and that is small liquor stores. How much wine volume can they move, and will they be willing to put money into to stock from their distributor that would that'll actually sit there on their shelves, and how much will it move? I know that you guys have had some really fun successes in the past, but that's certainly probably the exception rather than the rule when it comes to the unfortunate small town access. So let's talk about a little bit about that as well. What do I do about it? Well, the good news is in the last 20 years, we've had a lot of legal wins in the wine world when it comes to winery direct shipping. There are several services that conglomerate shipping, places like Naked Wine, etc., that offer discounts because they take out that distribution middleman and they ship direct to you. So those are good opportunities if you're an enthusiastic wine drinker and set up the opportunity to buy at volume, because the biggest challenge there is shipping. The question, what you want to do is you don't want to end up paying more for your shipping than you would on your discount. You've got to make a balance of those two things. But you'd be amazed at how low those prices at sale from winery to distributor really are. And basically it can help out that winery in a great way. So one, if you're really loyal to winery, become part of their wine club. Okay. Now, again, I would recommend this mostly for boutique and harder to get wines, simply because, for instance, I was a part of Michael David's wine club for a while. I love Michael David wine. I saw a shout out a little bit back about Petite. That's their Petite Syrah, Petite Verdot blend. It is kick ass. But the wines that I was getting with their basic club were very rarely different than the ones that I could get at my local Total Wine. So if you add on the inconvenience of having to be sober and present at time of delivery, that means that, and I would have to end up going to FedEx to pick it up my shipment anyway. I basically, when I called and canceled, I said, hey, I love your wines. I promote your wines all the time in my wine tastings. Fear not. I'm still a loyal fan, but I don't need your wine club because you guys are very well distributed. They're a good, powerful, they have a lot of throughput. They're doing a lot of volume. Now you go to someplace like, say, Chateau Boswell, which only ships to club members. Some of these tiny places that you might visit on one of my wine tours, a lot of them you're never, ever going to see in a store. Okay. And that's okay. That's part of what the beauty of discovering that tiny winemaker is. When the guy produces only a few thousand cases and that's his entire production run, cool. You want to be one of those few thousand. So subscribe to those small maker wine lists. Get a part of a wine club, especially ones that will help you explore new wines by your flavor preferences. Okay. You tell them what types of flavors and what types of grapes you already like. They help you explore in and around those areas. It's a fantastic and effective way to get good quality wines that you're not going to see at your local grocery store or even your big box store. Okay, that's the other thing I want to advocate for you guys, to not be locked into what I often have the same challenge with, that is the instant gratification of being able to go pick up a bottle, right? And as Rob pointed out before, the shopping experience of comparison. Oh, look, this looks kind of fun. I'm gonna try that. I think that there's room in your world for both of those things, and so keep in mind the opportunity for wine clubs, discount clubs, and winery direct shipping. Market Street has a great wine selection. Let's say, and so Market Street is a Safeway store, right? They are part of that brand, same as Tom Thumb, I want to say. Yeah, I think Tom Thumb, because I think my code works there the same way as how I found that out. But got champagne at a high cost, so he made an end cap with $60 bottles with the champagne beer similar. Wow, that's a good display. And that wine guy knows what he's doing, man. I'm telling you. So United Foods, is that the brand name, Corey? Yeah. And again, that's their, so there's a comparison, by the way, between grocery stores and wine. The Jackson family of wines is like the United brands of grocery stores. Market Street is their targeting of a slightly more elegant, slightly higher price, much more boutique style compared to, say, their Safeway brands, which is an everyday, run-of-the-mill, purpose-built grocery store. HEB has their main market, their main stuff, and then they've got their central market brands. So a lot of them do that. In wines, there's no difference, right? If you talk about the difference between Freemark Abbey and Kendall Jackson, they're owned by the same company, but there are worlds of difference when we talk about price point and availability and a lot of other stuff. So, yeah, when you talk about wine tastings, Rob has a point about how Market Street does wine tastings, which is great. You'll notice that most of the time you see wine tastings, they are very much for the purpose of moving somebody in particular's wine. It's not a bad thing, but it is a thing. Understand that they're trying to get you to buy something in particular. Something I try and strive for as far as my education, my relationship with you guys, my guests, and my fans, is that I am not here to sell you on anything. I am here to make you fall in love with wine. And that you can go to a wine tasting at some really awesome, like, high-end restaurants. But I almost guarantee you that wine tasting is a relationship between a winemaker and their chef or management that are trying to coordinate to make those wines available and possible. That's not a broad education and experience. So it's one of the things that I feel that we offer together as an advantage, is that we don't have those kind of boundaries. I mean, the worst boundary that we have together is what we can get our hands on. And one of the things that I'm kind of happy with right now, especially with series like this and in our tastings, is that I want you to remember that I'm a retail buyer just like you. At the wine tastings at Scarborough, I was ordering directly from my distributor, which meant a lot of the wines that I could get weren't necessarily easily available to you. Now I can point to you directly where you can purchase these things online and have them shipped to your door, right? I'm hoping that we at least share much more commonality in that space, so that, I mean, I've always said that I don't like to recommend wines that are hard to get in boutique. Now, here's the thing. I would love to take you guys to David Fulton Winery in California and sit you down for an afternoon and have you taste some of the most amazing Petit Syrah that you're ever going to have in your life. But that's a separate thing than the day-to-day drinking, right? That's that luxury, not grocery end thing. So anyway, and so much sweet wine. Well, Jennifer, you got a point there. They're catering to their audience. Absolutely about the who drinks what. I had a friend of mine send me a thing today. Matt sent me a link to wine floats. Now the article said wine floats are a thing, and I'm going to dispute that premise. They are not a thing. I mean, they are a thing. They're an object, but they're not a fad. And I can say, sure, throw ice cream in anything. It generally makes it better. But that's just me. And you'd have to choose your wine kind of carefully, I would think, as to the type of float you're going to have. If you've ever talked to me about, when we talk about sweets in general and wine pairing, you got to be real careful. People often say, oh, well, chocolate and wine are great together. Well, yeah, chocolate and wine are great together if your wine is actually sweeter than your chocolate. But if you got this big, bold, dark red wine, you're going to have a bigger, bolder, darker chocolate. So, like wine and ice cream. And you barely like chocolate and wine. I know. That's okay. You're forgiven. So, any other last questions? We only got a couple of minutes left. Things I need to be talking about. Maybe with port, sure, because port is sweet, right? Tends to be sweeter, therefore it's sweeter than your chocolates. Win-win. See, true professional. Wine float. See, now, Mary's now got I've just given Mary a bad idea. I'll quote somebody I'm a YouTube fan of. I'll put a link down in the description maybe when this is done. Ice wines, well, maybe Jason, I don't know. I mean, ice wines are so sweet in like a honeysuckle and honeycomb kind of way. I would almost want to do those. This is that part where their best preparing is actually like dried or fresh fruit, right? It's like, I love a piece of fresh peach, next to ice wines, or even some really salty cheeses where you counterbalance sweet and salty with that factor. So ice wines are not the devil, Rob Hamlin. They are definitely not the devil. They're good for you. They have a purpose. They have a place. So you remember, the way I think about wine is it's like any other art, especially like music, for instance. I mean, ice wines have a purpose. They might be a very exclusive and small purpose, but there you go. Just like, Miley Cyrus has a purpose, small and exclusive purpose. So you're gonna skip that Friday session. I'm not doing any wine floats. Don't worry about that. I am not a fan, to say the least. I will not be doing any of the wine floating businesses. Although maybe during the wine fads thing, we can do we can do a whole show on dumb things to do with your wine. But I'm not against taking really inexpensive wines and gussying them up with fruit and making sangria. It's perfectly acceptable. It's not that this is some sort of uncorruptible juice, but in the same way that certain things are meant to be enjoyed on their own, and that's okay. So, all right. So coming up on Friday, Sauvignon Blanc tasting. We do have tickets still available if you guys are interested for that. For my Patreon supporters, I've got for my 20 and above level, I figured out how to get you guys discount codes so that you guys get one free wine tasting per month as part of your patronage, because you guys are awesome. I love the fact that we're doing well here. Please, if you guys have questions that I wasn't able to answer, or you think of later, comment down below, like and subscribe. If you really want to help me get this channel to grow, that's the kind of things that I need in your support mostly. I mean, I love the fact that you're here, and I love the fact that you guys are chatting, but comment interactions are really important, and I love to hear your questions going through. Also, they're an easier example for others to access the answers to your questions. So as opposed to just the live chat, commenting is awesomer. So very cool. What was it? And serving it to your mom, because that's what we do. All right. I don't even know what that means. Is that like Mikey Likes It, where you just take wines that you don't like and give them to your mother? That's not right. Mother's Day's coming. You should think very seriously about not doing that. Those are not fun. All right. So next week we'll do more grocery store grabs. We're going to talk about other topics, and be all kinds of it. Could you pair wine and a hard alcohol or mix it? There are some fortified, what that would be called is fortifying the wine. There are rare. Mulling wines usually means adding spices, but often they'll add brandy or hard spirits to it to up the alcohol percentage. So there's that, but rarely. I mean, again, wine cocktails are not infrequent. I've seen a couple of very interesting Merlot cocktails, red wine, or cocktails that involve robust red wines. Merlots and Malbecs, and that middle ground of jammy reds seem to be the most popular. And they add some interesting robustness to a cocktail that most spirits don't bring, because you got that extra juice content, but you're also bringing in alcohol. So maybe you know what? There it is. There's a topic idea. I need to write it down so that I do not forget. But we can do a little topic on wine cocktails and how we bring in wine and spirits into a meld and a mix. I like that idea. Thank you, Jason. Very good call. So hang on. Hey, Google, take a note. Make a show about wine cocktails. I don't think she's going to do it. I think she's going to be mad at me. You had a bunch when you were in Germany last December. It was Glühwein. Yes, Glühwein. Glühwein is a specific blending wine that they serve warm and they add a bunch of brandy to it, and it's a way to get totally like German level soused in the winter time. It is very sweet by itself. It is very inexpensive as well. I mean, you can usually grab a bottle around here from the major label that they ship in for like $8, $6, something like that. So, but yeah, that's it's almost a Manischewitz level experience, if you ask me. It's wow. It's very Concordy. I said only hookers drink champagne cocktails. Wow, Rob, it's Mother's Day. Be nice, or it's gonna be Mother's Day. It's all on the news. It's all I'm seeing in my ad threads these days that I should be paying attention to Mother's Day. All right, guys. Well, thank you once again for an awesome live stream for WineShark Wednesday. I hope to see you guys again soon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and go follow us and support us on Patreon. We'll see you guys next week. If you have questions and you want to see topics, please post them down in the comments or come over to Facebook, visit us there, and make your suggestions. So once again, I'm Glenn Boswell, the WineShark, and thank you guys so much. Cheers and carry on.